Nothing nice to say. She should be quiet.
People say that Stephen A. is a coon. You agree with that? Everybody got quiet on that one? Okay. Go ahead.
Rudy Giuliani practices voodoo. So he put a voodoo hex on my girl, Hillary, and that's why she got woozy. And the Secret Service had to prop her up and put her in the van.
But take us to a break, my dude.
It was voodoo, son.
I don't know about that voodoo.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is Three Black Guys with a Mic.
What's happening? This is Maynard Scales, Three Black Guys with a Mic. Today, I'm doing Black Guy Talk. I'm talking to a very good friend of mine, a mentor, and an all-around good brother. His name is Mr. Sonny Andre. Sonny has been a radio vet for ever, probably 30 years or more. I want to bring you in. Sonny, what's happening, my dude? How are you?
I'm honored to be a part of it, brother. Thank you. It's actually 41 years this year.
41 years. I see the wisdom, brother. I see the wisdom. I ain't mad at it. So, what I really want to do is kind of talk a little bit about journeys. And okay. it kind of, as I get a little bit older and I'm trying to get my little bit of wisdom in, I start realizing that we really, where we meet people and we become friends or co-workers, acquaintances, whatever it may be, is really about journeys. And I remember I never looked at it this way, but I was returning to college because I had left school before and came to Norfolk State. It was my first time moving to Virginia and interned at this radio station run by the Reverend Bishop Willis. And a lot of people in the industry probably know that name. He owned, at one point, Bishop Willis owned more radio stations as a black man than anyone else.
Yep.
Which was odd and strange because it just seemed like we worked with this guy who was this, small-time businessman, but he was really a relatively large business person. And you had been at this station, and because you were there, and Morris Baxter and Damon D and Phil Nelson and some others, I always thought that this was your station, not station as in radio station, but your station in life. Like this is where you are. What I didn't know was that this was part of your journey. And so I know you have been some other places before in radio. Why don't you kind of, help me understand your journey? I know you started in radio maybe 80, 81.
In 1980, Wheeling, West Virginia, where I was raised, and then was moved to West Palm Beach, Florida. And when I was in Florida, I was lost to say the least. I remember I was working at this top 40 station and had my own TV dance show, and it was all about that culture. And I had lost sight of our culture. There's some brothers playing basketball across the street from me. And I remember I went over and they were just being brothers. They just having fun. And I'm like, why are they so loud? And it hit me deep in my soul when I said, why are they so loud? I am they. What is wrong with me? I've become one of those brothers. And I knew I was lost. We used to have this magazine called Radio and Records, which was the trade magazine. And I opened it up to job openings, and it was Power 94, Norfolk, Virginia, night jock. I'm like, yes. I sent an air check. Kevin Brown, who was doing the morning show, called me that day that he received it. And that's how I got into Hampton Roads. And of course, unfortunately, Power 94 blew up in the sense of the format was gone. And Bishop Willis bought the format, and that's where you met me at WNYK way back in the day. So that's my Norfolk journey.
Right. And so, and it just seemed like to me that you were always there. But actually, the time that I came in 92, you were actually packing bags and on your way out the door. But it just always seemed you were there. And I went on to stay on and intern and ultimately beg Morris to just let me go get your lunch or whatever. But the one thing I remember is while I was taking production classes in school, you were the production director, and you were the first person that really broke down how to cut a spot. Or how to, do, and I never told you this. I don't know if I ever told you this, but that always stayed in my head. Like, okay, I'm gonna do what he did. In fact, there was some tricks that you employed. Like, you turned the speakers on a little bit low to get that reverb sound in the room as we were cutting the spot. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
that's a trick. So,
Okay.
So thank you first off. But now that we talk about as you move forward, you had an opportunity to work with some important people. But you know what? Before we go there, let me ask this question. Now I don't want to catch you off guard, or maybe I do a little bit. It seemed like at that time, in that 90s, that there was something happening inside. Like you seemed oftentimes, and I don't know if it's because we were a bunch of kids and we were running around the station asking for help with things or getting in the way, but you seemed like you had a little bit of angst or anger about things. Is that accurate?
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Yes, I was on the 9 at all times. You know, I think it comes from growing up in West Virginia, having to fight often, hearing the N-word often, having guns pulled often. And then, other brothers going through the same thing. So they're on edge. And I've probably been in over 50 fights in my life. I mean, hardcore fist fights. And I was extremely confrontational, or I could be. I don't think I ever really started it, but I'd be happy to finish it. And yeah, man, I was on edge always.
Yeah. And for that, the funny thing for that, I was a little bit like, I don't know, but because like, listen, the honest truth is like Phil, Damon, and Morris, they were like the big brothers that would be like, yo, man, just sit down somewhere. They didn't teach me as much on the production side. Well, Morris taught me and Damon's taught me a little bit about, programming, etc. But I was really interested in production, and that's where I kind of gravitated towards you. So you had this thing, and then as you got ready to exit, and you left before things really got strange there, when Willis sold the stations and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then you moved on to your next spot along your journey. Where did that land you?
Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I would meet my wife. That's where my life would change dramatically. That's where I met Monique, the actress, comedian. She was just starting a comedy club, and she was funnier than the comics she was bringing in. Tony Woods, by the way, was one of those. Tony's a legend. He's just on Tiffany Haddish's They Ready. So I was cheering the entire time seeing Tony that he's still in the game. But Monique was funnier than everyone else. So she was my co-host on the air. And then years later, she would have me co-host with her in Los Angeles. But Baltimore is where things changed. I met my wife. I had a come to Jesus moment that I was tired. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Maybe you've said that yourself. Something's wrong here. And I'm tired of dating. I want love in my life. And I had a breakdown, and I just said, God, what's wrong with me? Why can't I love? I remember crying myself to sleep, just saying, I just want to be in love. I'm tired of all this anger. God, if you bless me with somebody, I promise I'll be faithful to her for the rest of my life. And the very next night, I meet this woman at this comedy club, at Monique's comedy club. And I was about to say, man, when you're hosting, you have the whole thing that you say. Right, here's the list. This is what I'm going to say. Welcome to Monique's, blah, 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 blah. But instead, out of my mouth came, who's celebrating a birthday? And I shocked myself at that. I'm like, I didn't mean to say that. And this table to my left, 3 hands go up and they all point to this woman who is Nicole. And I said, dang, she cute. But I'm tired of dating, man. I'm just tired. But we met after. I gave her a T-shirt, and we ended up. She called me on the air, I think. Hello, honey. And the rest is history. I mean, we started dating, and everything. I knew everything was different. Everything was. She was so mature. This was a lady. She was so calm. Where I'm on a 9 at all times, she's always on a 1. And that's what I really needed in life. So from Baltimore, we went to Kansas City, Detroit, back to Hampton Roads, Greenville, South Carolina. And then I got the phone call from Los Angeles, and Monique had this national radio show, and I went out to LA to be with Monique. And that only lasted like 6 months because God was calling. Yeah, God was screaming.
You know, the funny thing is, you know, a lot of people don't understand like the WKRP in Cincinnati song, Up and Down the Dial, Town to Town, etc. But you know, you did that. You've been all over the country with radio, and interestingly enough, you know, somehow I seem to follow you, right? So I wound up with Arbitron. Kansas City was one of my markets, and that's where we kind of first reconnected after years. Yep. And you were where were you at, KPRS?
Yeah, man. Breakfast Brothers.
Right.
Oldest continuous black-owned station in the nation.
Right. Tell me a little bit about your experience in Kansas City.
Oh, loved it, man. Kansas City was good to me. I was on Wheel of Fortune and 18th and Vine on HBO, but being a part of that legendary station, I remember Mike Carter saying, "I just want to be number one once before Mildred does." His grandmother, who was a founder with Skip, sorry. That he just wanted to be number one time before she passed. And I believe in that 5 years before I left, we were number one 17 times, which was an unbelievable blessing. But while we were killing it ratings wise, we weren't making that money, or in relative terms. You know, the people across the street were making a lot more money. And I just went in and asked for more money. They said no. And Detroit had an opening, and that's how radio is. You know, if you want to advance financially, you have to take that next step. And I took that next step to Detroit. But that station blew up in just, I think, 9 months or so. They flipped the format. So that's how I landed back in Hampton Roads, which is always going to be my home. I love the 757, man.
What I can't remember. What station were you on in Detroit?
It was The Groove.
The Groove.
Jamming old school, yeah. Right. So we played the same 40 songs over and over.
Playlist was this long. The playlist was on one sheet of paper.
There's another song you haven't heard in an hour.
And that's where we reconnected once more. I was in Detroit with Radio 1, which obviously had been your previous employer, and as you said, in Baltimore and what have you. And I was trying to get you, man. I was like, damn, we really want Sonny over here. I was trying to, we couldn't figure it out. But so, you know, time goes on, and you came back to Hampton Roads, and you were at VKL, and which I came to VKL, but this is after you left. I actually became the GSM over there, and you were on your way out because Steve Harvey came on.
No, this is well before that. I think Steve didn't come for like another year. Okay. But I was on my way out. I was offered a morning job in Dallas, and I went into GM. I think we were number one urban at the time. This was maybe 2003. And I was offered mornings in Dallas, and it was like, man, going to Dallas, major market, put in my 2 weeks notice, and Eric Mastel was the GM. And he said, "You're not going to let us keep you?" I'm like, "Well, this is what they're offering me." And I showed him the contract. He said, "Well, we can't pay you that, but what if we get in the ballpark?" I'm like, "Really?" He said, "Yes, we want to keep you here." I'm like, "Really?" And I talked it over with my wife, and she's like, "Honey, it's up to you." So I stayed in Hampton Roads, but then Mastel moved on, and this new GM came in, Skip. I don't know if Skip was there when you were there.
Yep. Tall, bald Skip.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first thing Skip said to me? He walked into the studio and said, "Sonny, I just looked at payroll. Wow." I'm like, "Well, that's what you had to do to keep me." He's like, "Uh-huh." And he turned and walked out. And then suddenly they stopped playing the morning show drops. They stopped referring to Sonny in the morning.
The writing was on the wall.
Writing's on the wall. And they didn't renew. I remember Don saying, "You're not fired. We're just not renewing your contract." I'm like, and from that point, my arrogance was on full display, because I was offered nights in Kansas City. I was offered a gig in Nashville. I'm like, "No, I want to be nationally syndicated." And I was unemployed for 9 months, man.
So here's the challenge. And
yes,
for great voices and great personalities, it's not as much of a challenge as it is, for instance, for someone on the sales side. You know, when I ran afoul at Radio 1, that was like 66 jobs. I was just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Or if you work for Clear Channel or now iHeart,
Wow.
and that's like 900 jobs that you just can't get, right?
Yep.
But being out of work for 9 months, what was that like for you? How did you grapple with that?
I thought it allowed me to hold on more to my prayer life, but it wasn't my lowest point. God continued to provide, and we got to that 9 month part, and we were struggling to pay rent. And then South Carolina, Greenville came in, and it was a quarter of what I was making, but it was the job that I needed to get. So I went down there, but it was humbling. It was truly humbling. It helped knock a lot of my arrogance out, but not all of it. Because as a radio personality, it's your show. It's the Sunny in the Morning show. Or whatever. It's all about you. Exactly. Yeah. It's all about you. But where I am now, of course, you realize it's not about you at all. So, but yeah, man, it hurt. It hurt a lot. My confidence was shattered. That okay, I turned down these jobs, and no one else is at least paying me the money that I think that I'm worth. And it was tough, but our relationship was good. Wifey she's like, baby, we got this. We're gonna get through it. And so I was in Greenville for almost 3 years before I got the call from LA.
Yeah, and that's Greenville, South Carolina is tiny.
Market 53.
Is it
somewhere
53? Is it that high?
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been in LA, you've been in Baltimore, you've been in Kansas City. Hampton Roads is, 39, 40, 41, something like that. So here you're at a 53. You said it's a little bit humbling. Tell me a little bit about when you felt like the turnaround was occurring from Greenville to where you were going. Like, how did you know that this was not your destination, but you were still on the path, on the journey?
Oh, I always knew that. It was always in the back of my mind. Something bigger is coming. Actually, I was offered a job at here where I am now at Family Life, and I turned it down. This was 05 or so, kind of. 06. I was offered a job in 06 at Family Life, which is a Christian radio ministry I'm at now, that at the time I think had 30 signals, and we're about to go over 70 signals throughout New York and PA, from Buffalo, Rochester, all over New York and PA. But I turned it down because I just felt something in my spirit, something bigger was coming. I didn't know Monique was coming. I didn't know she was going to offer me her co-host position, but LA is where I was really humbled, man. I went out there. It's my dream job. We're on in LA and Detroit and DC, Houston. I mean, this is what I've wanted all my life. And I was miserable because Mo and the gang, they believe in something else. And I believe in God. But how much did I really believe in God? Every time I got tested, I didn't have the answers. I kept running to the Bible. I didn't have the answers. And one day, brother, I just said, God, if you don't want me here, take it away. And I heard an audible voice say, "Are you sure?" Bro, I started crying. I'm like, yes, I'm sure. I'm. If you don't want me here, take it away. They fired me the next day.
Wow.
Yes. Before that, I'm sorry. I got an email from Rick here at Family Life. He had been listening, saying, "Sonny, I don't know how you're doing it. I mean, you don't need to be with the vileness that I'm hearing and because Mo's very worldly."
Right.
But he sent me an email saying there's always room for you here in Snowy Bath. So that was like the day before. And that's when I said, God, if you don't want me here, take it away. And I audibly heard, "Are you sure?" And the next day they said, "Can you come back after work?" I'm like, "Sure." And they was like, "We're going to let you go." I said, "Oh, okay." And it was like, "Okay." I said, "Yeah, it's okay. I prayed for this, y'all." I said, "God, if you don't want me here, take it away. I'm good." And Monique looked at me. She's like, "I'm proud of you." I'm like, "Okay, proud of me or not, I'm out." So peace.
Right.
Brother, I got home. I got in the car and I lost it. I'm bawling. I'm like, my God, what, help me. And I called my wife and she was like, "Baby, we're going to be okay." And I reached out to Rick Snavely, who runs Family Life. I said, "So what exactly is available in Snowy Bath?" And he's like, "Why? What happened?" And I told him, and he said, Sunday, do you think God is calling you to family life? I said, Rick, I think God is screaming at me right now. But I had also reached out to a station in Atlanta, and they're like, yo, we're interested. And Nicole's like, no.
Not
If you think,
Atlanta.
well, she's just like, no. If you think God is calling you, honey, we need to listen to God. And we've been here since 2008. And here, I think if I can get this in real quick, I'm sorry if I'm going too long, but
No,
here is where I was humbled to a point of being in tears almost every night, because I went from that Los Angeles money to ministry money. And it's a fourth of what I was making. So the bill collectors are calling, over and over again. My credit is being shot. We can't afford to do anything. And you don't really realize that God is all you need until God is all you have. That's all we had. And we stayed together. We never yelled at each other. At nights that I cried in my wife's arms, that's humbling, man. And she was my rock. And we just prayed, and it allowed I think our relationship has always been strong, but that during that struggle, our baby girl, she didn't know we were broke, but God opened doors. The home that we live in now, the young man used to work at the station, and we just took over the payments, where the guy who has the note said, I see where you're struggling. And he realized it, and that was a blessing there. But it took years. Yeah, that turnaround took maybe 3-4 years before we start to see a turnaround. But man, when you see your bills just falling, and you don't have money for this, and you can't even go to McDonald's. I mean, it hurt. But praise God, he helped us to realize our dependency on him. And that, I think that gives me an authenticity at the ministry now, that I understand what it feels to be hurt, to be devastated. And, when I go through the show now, it's not about me. It's about how can I encourage those people who are hurting, especially during this time, during COVID, during people losing their jobs, and people are looking, over and over again, you see the prayer requests of people who they're hurting. So, I go through my show where before there's no entertainment news now. It's where can I encourage someone here? Where can I make someone laugh here? And every single one of my breaks is now written out. That's something I never did before. I do bullet points, but with bullet points, then in radio you have your catchphrases. You say things you say over and over too many times, repeating yourself. And so I think it's made me a better jock, and it's just truly been a blessing, man. This I've had opportunities to leave. From when I first got here, one of the big stations called, and we just felt the need to stay. And I'm glad, because I believe before I had my mother's faith, many of us go to church because mom says go to church.
Right.
Many of us pray because mom says pray. And but until it is your relationship, until it's you reaching out to God, until you actually have that personal relationship, that has truly changed my life in a way that I will forever be grateful.
So we see the entire up to this portion, this part of the journey, that it was West Virginia, which unfortunately made you a Steeler fan, which that's a whole other thing. And then, Florida, and then Hampton Roads, and Baltimore, and so on and so forth. And now you're here at Bath. But through that journey, and where there were times where, like you said, you were always ready to go. You were at 9. What role in that time do you think that some of the world played in, like alcohol or what have you, or womanizing or any of those kinds of things? And I know that just off over your shoulder, you got to be careful about what you say. I understand.
She knows my life. She
Right.
knew that I was out there. She knows, and she loved me anyway. All of those excesses are things that I think we run to when we're trying to fill that hole. And as a Christian, I'm saying this as a man who loves Jesus, that hole that I continue to look for in other relationships. I used to get high every day. If probably every day you saw me, I was high. Every day. You know? Because it's that hole that you're looking to fill and you can never fill it. And that's why some people go from, alcohol to weed to cocaine to whatever else, because they're trying to fill that hole to relationship. But when you find that hole finally filled, you stop chasing after those things. And those things that, case in point, when I was in LA, it had the medicinal weed, which is super powerful. I mean, it's medicinal marijuana. So you're smoking this to go to sleep, or you're smoking this because of pain, what have you, right? And I remember it was White Willow was the strain, and I would take 2 hits and I was good for the entire day. Just, I'm feeling good, all day. One day I took 5 hits just to see what it'd be like. And brother, I was paralyzed. I was like, wow. This is not fun. Because I'm like, I don't want to do this again. When everything went down with Monique and coming to family life and saying to Rick, yes, I'm ready, God's calling me, I still had the same strain. I still had the same batch of White Willow. And I smoked like 5, 6 hits, nothing. I'm like, okay, I'm stressed. 2 more hits, nothing. I'm like, okay, I'm just stressed, that's all. Put it to the side, went to bed, got up that morning, like I always do, a couple of hits, some coffee, I'm good. 2 hits, 3 hits. This is the same stuff that paralyzed me like a week or so later, or earlier. I took maybe 10 hits, nothing. And I said, okay, I get it. God just took it away from me.
Right.
Brother, and to prove that it was still as potent as it was, one of my neighbors, I was like, you good with this? Because I think I'm done. And gave it to her. And she came to me later in the day. She's like, I said, wow. I mean, that's how God took that taste away from. That's supernatural, man. That's the kind of stuff that if I read about, I'm like, yeah, okay, all right. But it's real. So I think that's I'm hoping I answered your question there, that I was chasing after all those things. And many of us chase after those things because something's missing. And that thing's not missing anymore. Even when God brought Nicole into my life, who Nicole grew up in a house of yelling and screaming. So I remember yelling early in a relationship. She's like, I'm not that girl. I grew up in a house like that. I'm not that girl. If that's how you want to be, I'm not your girl. And her always being on the one, and showing unbelievable strength without ever raising her voice. I think I've heard Nicole cuss maybe once in 25 years, or maybe twice, and even then she's joking. Keep saying, you're like, Nicole. But God knew I needed that stabilizer that was always praying over me. Every day she wakes me up with a cup of coffee and prays over our day. So, I'm blessed watching her cook, taking out my baby.
That's just great. So I think the first time I met your wife is you were in Kansas City then, and I came to your house. We went went to Hooters. I loved Kansas City. I thought it was a great town. And I met her, and then again in Detroit, we had a chance to spend time, and it's amazing that these two forces in your life seem to be what grounds you. Your strength and faith in the Lord, and this amazing relationship with this woman. And so I wonder how much of it, and it may very well may be cyclical in some respect. Like the Lord brought her to you, or she helped you actually get closer to the Lord.
We both had a prayer the night before we met. That night that I cried out and said, God, I'm tired of this. I wanted to be in love. She had that same prayer that same night. And it was her birthday night. And we met the next night at Monique's. And what's funny is she just said a prayer, God, send me someone for me. And she met a friend of mine who was a state trooper earlier in the day, who was all over her at the DMV. He's like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Pretty boy, always had all the women. Every night he'd come to Monique's, he'd have a different woman. I didn't even know he was married. He had a different woman all the time. And he had his eyes set on Nicole, and then she met me later on that night. And I mean, seriously, I don't know how to explain it other to say God, that we prayed for each other and met each other. And it's not like we settled, because I remember spinning her around like, let me see what you're working with here. And she allowed me to do that. I see now it was objectifying her, which I'm sorry, but hey, I'm married 25 years. So,
right. So, this has been an amazing moment, and I'm just glad that we got a chance to talk about it. But I want to, in this industry, in radio or in television, we find ourselves always on a journey. We got lots of destinations, and it's not very different from a lot of other people. It's a lot of times our destinations, for legal and contractual obligations, take us to, at least 75 miles away, or whatever the case may be. Or you can't work for 6 months in this town until such and such. But people are working at banks, or people, you're from West Virginia, people are, hurting because the coal industry isn't what it once was, or the steel industry isn't what it once was, or whatever. What's your message to people as they are trying to go through they're hoping to get to the next destination in their journey, but sometimes they can't quite see it? What would you say to that person?
I just had a chat with a brother who is disgruntled because he can't find that next radio gig. And he keeps saying, I'm sick and tired of not being able to find this radio gig. And I'm like, well, brother, maybe radio at this point is not your calling. Yeah, I know it's what you want to do, but you have other skills. There are times that I know that I had to continue to chase that check, because if I wanted to make more money, I had to go chase that check in a different city. And sometimes if it is radio or whatever your field is, if that's what it is, you may have to go chase that check in another city, or you may need to find another career. And that's tough, especially when you're older. But, willpower is amazing, man. If you have to, I refused to give up when I was without work for 9 months. It would have been easy to give up and start selling cars. I had a couple of car dealerships like, dude, you can make a lot of money with us. But I didn't want to give up on my dream, and I didn't. So if you don't want to give up on your dream, whatever that dream is, and it's not working for you in Hampton Roads or wherever you're watching this, you may have to pick up Indeed or wherever the job sites are and see where that next opportunity is, and don't be afraid. You have to be your number one cheerleader. You have to be your number one cheerleader. So, man, I hope that for those that are struggling, that they can find peace in the struggle, because that's imperative. If I didn't find peace when the bill collectors are calling every day, I can't imagine what would have happened. But yeah, pick up the phone. If that bill collectors are calling, pick up the phone, talk to them. Yeah, I was amazed that all of them, for the most part, were good to go. They were like, okay, yeah. I told them, hey, I'm only making a quarter of what I was making. What can you pay? Okay, I can pay this. And it made the journey back to good credit a long time, but it happened. I remember when my wife's birthday rolled around, I'm like, I have no money. I have no credit. Let me just try to apply for credit here. And my credit score popped up. I cried because I was finally over 700. I think I was probably in the fives for a while. It took a long time to get there, but sometimes that's what it takes. That fix that you're looking for may not be next week, may not be next month. That fix may not be for another year or two, but it's going to come. I truly believe no matter what it is you're doing, it's going to come. You just have to. You got to keep fighting. You got to be your number one cheerleader and say, okay, I'm going to do it. Didn't do it today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Didn't do it again today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. You have to psych yourself up. And I pray if you don't have that in your own self, that you have someone like my wife, who was my cheerleader. It's like, baby, we're going to do this. We're going to get through this. So really important.
Well, I just want to say, personally, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on with me today. I appreciate the word that you shared. Again, I'm sure you never knew. I always thought these things about you, that you set me on a path, that you and then there's been 4 or 5 times I've called you, hey Sonny, I need you to, record a voiceover for me, record a drop for me. And, one time I said, well, how much do I owe you? And you said, man, don't worry about it. And, that kind of thing, that's a big deal, man, because you're a phenomenal talent. You know, every once in a while I still hear you on a Pomoko's commercial in town, and you ain't lived here in forever, right?
Yeah.
But you're a phenomenal talent. You're a wonderful person, and I can tell you that to be dubbed Sonny is exactly who you are. You're a ray of sunshine, and I see your Facebook page. I give you a lot of, I'll give you hell about the Steelers sometimes, and we kind of go back and forth. But yo, my dude, I got nothing but love for you, and I appreciate you.
That. I feel that love, brother. Right back to you. Anything I can do to help out at any time, you let me know, without doubt.
Well, this is it. So we want to thank you guys for watching, and check out more Three Black Guys at the Mic at the website there. We want to say thank you once more to my main man, Sonny Andre. Peace and love.